현재 전 세계적인 경기 침체 상황에도 불구하고 국내 방산업계는 최고 호황을 누리고 있습니다. 특히 내년에는 폴란드 수출 계약 건들의 본격적인 납품이 이뤄지면서 실적 전치가 기대되고 있는데요. 지난 23일 미국 워싱턴 포스트는 한국이 세계 최대 무기 공급자가 되기 위해 무기 수출을 확대하고 있다고 보도했습니다. 또한 러시아 우크라이나 전쟁 중에 서방 국가들의 무기 수요 증가는 한국의 방위 산업이 최고의 무기 판매국이자 글로벌 플레이어가 될 수 있는 전례 없는 기회를 제공했다고 분석합니다. 실제로 세계적인 방산 수요 증가에 힘입어 국내 방산 업체들은 전년 대비 수익성이 대폭 늘었습니다. 우리나라는 올해 폴란드와만 124억 달러, 우리 돈 약 15조 6,947억 원에 달하는 초대형 무기 수출 계약을 성사시켰고 내년에는 더 좋은 실적이 예상됩니다. 세계 각국이 군비를 늘리는 상황에서 주요 방산 수출국의 생산 능력에 제한이 걸리며 한국 방위 산업이나 설 자리도 점점 늘어나고 있는데요. 따라서 현재 폴란드 현지 방송에서는 한국 방산에 관련한 프로그램을 정기적으로 편성하고 있습니다. 폴란드 공영방송은 군사 전문가를 초대해 특히 극한의 날씨와 산악 지형에도 흔들림 없이 딱 맞도록 개발된 우리 무기가 폴란드에서도 장점으로 작용할지 궁금증을 나타냅니다.
Mostly by SIMTAC, Geopolitical and Military Analysis Force Analysis. Hello, sir. Good to have you with us. I would like to hear your assessment of the recently signed contract between Poland and Republic of Korea. So South Korea, called one of the most important and one of the biggest ones in military history.
Yes, indeed. First off, of course, Poland's purchase of these weapon systems comes in the context of the conflict of Ukraine, of course. It's not a purely isolated Polish issue. Of course, Poland has been delivering a lot of artillery systems to Ukraine. So on the one hand, Poland is replenishing its own inventory to make sure that it maintains that artillery capacity. But of course, the Russian invasion of Ukraine has also warned a lot of Europe, especially Poland, about the risks of Russian military aggression, which is, of course, leading Poland to also revisit its armament programs and to make sure that they have a very capable military force at the ready.
But maybe everything in the current reality should be diversified as much as possible, as we try to understand the current situation as the energy transition not only happens as it was supposed to be to the renewables, but as well as its pressure to change the conditions during the war in Ukraine. We know that relying on one supplier of energy, like Russia was for majority of Europe, is simply not enough. So maybe the same thing should be judged in terms of military contracts. We know that the political scene in South Korea is very volatile. However, as there is no chance for being re-elected and it really goes in binary modes from 0 to 1, maybe the contract will not be ended and fulfilled with the change of the government within the next years.
Well, every arms purchase, of course, includes some element of political risk. This is true. But I think if we look at Korea's history of its role as an arms supplier, they have been very reliable in the past. And even though diversification plays a really big part here, and this kind of diversification can avert a lot of risks when some systems become unavailable or even spare parts and maintenance becomes impossible due to political risk, that diversification can protect you. But on the other hand, South Korea has also simply been growing as a very stable and reliable arms producer. And these Korean artillery systems that we are talking about are actually considered some of the top of the line artillery systems that are available in the world. So I think we definitely shouldn't frame the acquisition as going out to diversify per se, and perhaps not necessarily getting the best equipment from a partner like the United States or Germany instead. The South Korean choice is a very obvious one these days in a lot of arms acquisitions.
Are the Korean K9 tanks very similar for the maybe amateur eye to American Abrams? Do they represent the same technology and capabilities as the American equipment?
They represent a similar level of technology. Obviously, there are different design choices that are being made between different systems that are available. One benefit here is, of course, that we are talking about systems that are standardized in terms of using the same types of munitions, so that at least reduces some of the additional logistics burden that might occur when you are diversifying and buying systems from different places. So all in all, the Korean systems are a very good option, I think, both in terms of what is available, because of course with other countries also boosting their defense capabilities, there are shortages in production capacity in some fields, which can also ramp up pricing, of course. So having that additional Korean capacity for production is already a benefit. And then if it fits logistically with the Western equipment that countries are already adopting, I think that only provides benefits.
Is the tank prepared especially for the war, hypothetical one on Korean Peninsula, the mountainous region, completely different from the terrain that is in Poland and Central and Eastern Europe, and especially within Poland, because if we go south in Central and Eastern Europe, it changes. But comparing terrain in the soil in Korean Peninsula and the one in Poland, it's completely different environment. Is this tank capable of withstanding, maybe to put it briefly, is it armored enough for the terrain in Poland?
I think definitely. Geography has a tremendous effect on the effectiveness of weapon systems. So this is a good question to ask. But of course, when we are talking about systems like tanks or artillery systems, the main method in which they function doesn't really vary all that much from a mountainous terrain or a flat terrain.
I asked this question because the analysts say, military analysts say that the side skirts of K9 tank are not armored enough to withstand the battle on the plains.
Of course, but I think this is not directly related to the mountainous terrain in Korea. The reality is that this is a design choice that you will make in any kind of weapon system. So essentially, when you start to design a tank, you kind of start off with the firepower of the system, the gun that is installed of it, which starts to define the minimum size of the vehicle to be able to carry that main gun, essentially. And then further design choices are made in terms of the dimension and the thickness of the armor, which also result in a trade-off with other elements such as mobility. While there could be an argument made that the armor or the side skirts might be not strong enough on this tank, reducing armor thickness on those parts will of course translate into increased tactical mobility. So that is more of a question of how exactly you want to implement the tank, or how you choose to implement it after understanding these design choices in the tank, of course. And on the battlefield, mobility can of course be just as useful, just as important as the actual firepower and armor of the vehicle.
May the end goal in this arms race be to make Korea a supplier for the biggest supplier for India, still reluctant to leave its Russian arms?
I think South Korea is definitely looking to play a bigger role in India. I also know that India is looking into further diversifying its arms acquisitions. They have, for a very significant degree, depended on Russia for most of their military equipment up until now. There are already some joint development programs currently in place today between India and South Korea, so they have already been able to penetrate that market to some degree. At the same time, India is doing this with a number of other countries, such as Israel. They are doing this in different fields, of course. But I think South Korea is definitely one of the top candidates as India goes ahead to look for that kind of diversification.
여러분의 소중한 의견을 남겨주세요. 바쁘시더라도 구독과 좋아요 부탁드립니다. 지금까지 단골이시였습니다. 시청해주셔서 감사합니다.